Hi folks, Rob here with 96 is your fix version 2.0. Now some people have tried the 96 fix as explained in the first video production I put out. Some have had success, some have not. Some people have come down on me because they want absolute proof before I go sharing this stuff with the public. I don't believe that's the case. I think you have a duty to do your own due diligence, and it's not like Microsoft makes sure they have a perfect product before they release it. And at least this way a whole lot of people can start trying different things. Now I have been doing some studying, and I've been talking to some people who have tried it, Doug Larson particularly, and we have had discussions concerning this on what is lacking from the first one. Now bear in mind, I very firmly believe that this is a valid process and that it can be used to discharge obligations that come with a remittance. I think if you examine it, this remittance option, as it is, or as it could be called, exists all the time. And it exists because the companies who are demanding payment from you generate revenue and profit by accessing things that belong to you. Now there has been a number of mistakes, but I think we have a pretty good idea of where we went wrong and what we can do now to fix it. So what we're going to do is we're going to re-examine the whole issue. I do have people who are going to be going through this process, so by the time you watch this on YouTube, you can bet that someone is doing it. Someone is trying it. Now, a number of the problems that I've noticed is that the Minister of Finance's mandate doesn't cover what we are asking him to do. I've seen letters where they would send, they would write back and they would say, "I wish we could help you, but our mandate doesn't allow it." Now they didn't say no. Essentially what they're coming and saying is, "I want to do it for you, but I don't have the tools. Give me the tools and I can do it." So that's one thing that was a potential problem. The other problem is that there might not be an actual account associated with the birth certificate, but that birth certificate does point to the right to draw from an actual existing account. And the other thing is, you have to mark the remittance in a proper manner and from a position of authority. So bearing all that in mind, let's look at the situation all over again, and I'll explain to you the steps that people are going to be taking now. Now, the problems with the other one, 5 main problems that we found. 1, no mandate. 2, they were incorrectly marked. There was no previous claim. People were trying to draw from the wrong account or a non-existent account, and there was no witness. So 96 is your fix version 2.0 seeks to address all of these. Now the process is, or the concept of being able to use a remittance as a remittance is clearly lawful. It's certainly there. But just because you have an account somewhere doesn't mean that you don't have to do the proper things to access it. Now, in order to increase the mandate, the Minister of Finance writes back and says he doesn't have a mandate to do that, but he's not saying that you don't have the ability or the power to increase his mandate. So in order to fix that, what we're going to do is we're going to increase his mandate. We're going to give him the mandate. Now, bear this in mind. He works for, apparently, the government, right? His mandate, as it stands now, was a function of what the people in the government told him he can do. But they never said we can't tell him what to do. It seems to me that we have the power to increase his mandate and to serve him a notice of increase of mandate. So we're going to send him a notice empowering him and increasing his mandate. Can you read that? Yeah. Notice of mandate. Now, also these things that we were sending out, perhaps they were incorrectly marked. One thing I didn't mention to people is that this option that is available, the remittance option, it's only available to the end user, to the consumer. So you have to mark upon your document that it is a consumer purchase. And this means you're not accept if you get a bill and you're operating a corporation, say, you can't use it because it's not a consumer purchase. You're not the end user. Now, there is no claim as well. And therefore, prior to serving these documents, you have to make a claim. And this claim is going to be establishing your ability to actually correctly mark it and to access the account that we're going to be accessing, and to increase the mandate of the Minister of Finance. So we're going to do a claim of right to address all of those things. Now, the wrong account, the big problem is people were pointing at the number on the birth certificate, mistakenly believing that this is the account from which we will draw from. And that's not the case. That account evidences your right, or the fact that you have paid into a different account, and we have to access the proper account. And that account is the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Now, I've already spoken to a lawyer for the federal government concerning our right and our ability to access the Consolidated Revenue Fund. And bear in mind, right now there's a surplus of like $5 billion there. I've mentioned our right to access it in order to meet our basic fundamental needs and to make use of the remittance option, or the 96 option. There was no argument from that lawyer concerning our right to do that. Because whose money is it? When it all boils down to it, it doesn't belong to the people in the government. It belongs to us. And if they've got a right to access it, to buy for themselves $500 office chairs or trips abroad, in order to do things which are clearly luxuries, then certainly we have the right to access the Consolidated Revenue Fund to pay for things that we need to live. So instead of going after the account evidenced by the birth certificate, we're going to go after the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Now, for witness, what needs to be done, and again, this is part of correctly marking it, what we're going to do is we're going to take a $1 Canadian stamp, and we're going to put that on it, and we're going to sign across that. Now, what we do by doing that is we draw the Postmaster General in as a witness, and it ends up being our stamp. So we're going to put the Postmaster General as a witness, and when we mark it, we're going to put that in the box where it's marked teller stamp. Because the other thing we're going to do when we do all of this, one of the claims, part of the claim of right that we send out, is we are going to be acting as a teller for the Bank of Canada. So now when you send this thing off to them, to the people who are demanding payment, and you're making use of this option, now you're dealing with them. You're sending them a document that has already been accepted by the Bank of Canada through one of its tellers, you. And if they don't like it, they don't want to accept it, the Postmaster General has received his consideration by way of that stamp, and you have canceled it with your own signature. And that means if they try just giving us a runaround, it gives us a lot more remedy now. Now what we're going to look at is what we have to do. How are we going to mark this document? And that's what we'll look at next. Okay, so how do we mark the remittances so that enough value is assigned to them that the people who want payment can take it to the Minister of Finance and draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund to pay for these things? First off, big one, you have to mark it consumer purchase. Okie doke, do it at a diagonal. If this was that's your remittance, you write across it consumer purchase. Now your remittance is going to have a little square on it. It'll tell you teller stamp. What you're going to do is you're going to put a $1 stamp in there, and you're going to sign it in blue ink right across the face of it. Right across the stamp. Now you also need some information. You have to be able to claim, you have to be able to point them to your right to do this. And that's what your birth certificate information is for. Now it should be made out, the name should match the name on the birth certificate, and that number, what we've been calling a bond tracking number, we're just going to call it a tracking number, and in your claim of right you're going to refer to it as your teller number. What you do is you put that number along with your signature. So that the people know that you do in fact hold a valid birth certificate, and that document entitles you to engage in this action, acting as a teller for the Bank of Canada. Now, once you take this, you send that off to them. Oh, there'll be a place in here where you have to assign the value. It'll say amount. How much have you sent in? This is where you tell them this is how much you're taking out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund, and you put the amount in there that corresponds with the amount of the demand. So it equals out. It's zero. Once you have done all that, your consumer purchase, the stamp on it brings in the Postmaster General, both as a witness now to this process, and he ends up having a duty to make sure that this stuff gets properly delivered. You've identified it as a consumer purchase so that they can justify going to the Consolidated Revenue Fund and drawing from it, and they know that they're not giving it to some corporation or who's going to use it for profit-making purposes. You've signed across it, canceled the stamp, and you've written in the number identifying from your birth certificate, which identifies you as having the power to draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund for these purposes. Now, I know you're going to ask, can I get money back? Can I have them give me cash? The answer is no. This option is there for when you need it. And if you have failed to use it, that's your own problem. No one stopped you from from looking at this information before. The 96 was on there the whole time. It's right down there. And you never looked it up. And yeah, so you paid. And now you want to go to the Consolidated Revenue Fund and get cash? You can't do that. Those debts are already been paid, so you got no right to draw from the fund to pay off a debt that's already been paid. You chose to pay it. What I'm willing to I'm willing to bet that the Consolidated Revenue Fund, the size of it, is a function of how many of these are out there floating around. And they always have enough in this fund to cover all of the remittances that are out there waiting to be redeemed. And if you don't do it, oh well, you've given up your option. It's very much like going to a restaurant where you are presented the bill and at the same time you're issued a coupon. And that coupon is good for the value of the bill, but you never knew it. So you paid. And you might have given the coupon back or you might have kept it. But the coupon was only good for that one meal. You've eaten it, the meal's gone, the debt is gone. You've got a reminder now. I don't see how you can use it and draw from it and get paid. Maybe for your rent. Rent would maybe be a different story. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick little synopsis of the steps involved so that you can use your remittance option in meeting these financial obligations placed upon you by people who are extracting the resources of this country to generate their own wealth. And because of that, that's why you have the option, the remittance option. Okay, so here's what we're going to be doing. It's a simple six-step process. Step number one, a notice to the Bank of Governor, to the, what's he called? Governor of the Bank of Canada. A notice to him telling him that, okay, so here we go. Let's do it over. Here it is, a simple six-step process. Number one is a notice to the bank governor, the Bank of Canada. You're going to send a notice to him, the governor. And you're going to tell him, listen, I'm going to be acting as a teller when these documents come in. I'm going to be acting as a teller for the Bank of Canada. That way, when the remittance is sent to the people demanding, they see that the Bank of Canada, through their authorized teller, you, has accepted it. So instead of us trying to put it up and have the flow going uphill, it's actually coming downhill. Number two, we serve a notice informing the Minister of Finance that his mandate has been expanded and he is now empowered to draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund in order to deal with your remittances. Number three is a claim of right, where you claim the right to draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund in order to deal with your remittances. Number four is the process where we mark the remittance. We sign it, date it, put a stamp on it, sign across that, put our birth certificate information on it, fill in the value, and send it off. Number five is a courtesy letter along with directions on how the people who are demanding payment, they're not going to be used to this. It's going to be a little bit different for them. So you should be nice and courteous, and you should write them a letter and giving them directions on exactly how to take this instrument and turn it into a financial thing for them. And explain to them that it is going to empower them to draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund through the Minister of Finance in order to pay this demand. And finally, you send it off all registered mail. See, pretty simple really, isn't it? So here we are with the high-tech Colored Board of Truth and Justice again. Boy, time flies, eh? It's already Tuesday. I was supposed to get this out last week, and people are relying on it, so I'm just going to bang it out, do the best I can. This is what you're going to be putting on your remittance. Now, bear in mind, when they send you an invoice, that's what they'll call it according to their rules. It'll be in two parts. You'll have the remittance down here, a 96 right here, and up here is your bill statement. It detaches here. They want you to send this in with your payment, and what we're going to be doing is showing you how this actually is your payment. So the whole thing together
is an invoice. It's consisting of a bill and a remittance. It's the demand to pay and a coupon. It's your liability and your remedy, all in one package. Now, in order to do this, you're going to detach that. You'll have to put these things on it. One, you'll have to stamp it as a teller. You have to put a stamp on there. $1 Canadian stamp should suffice. You write across it, and when you do that, you're going to be acting as a teller because you will have sent out a letter to the governor of the Bank of Canada telling him you'll be acting as a teller. You'll be putting your signature across that stamp. Upon it, you will also put the birth certificate information that you have. Now, if you don't have a birth certificate, if you only have a permanent residency card, there's an unidentified number on there as well. You're looking for that unidentified number, your registration number, and your name. Those are the three pieces of information that you need that will be able to allow you to start discharging your debts in this way. You'll have to put the date on it, of course, because a good teller would do that. You have to fill in the amount. There'll be a box here. Fill that box in based on the amount owed. Over here it's owed. Make that match so it zeroes out. And then you write across it, consumer purchase. What this means is you're the end user. Do not try doing this if you're paying debts for a business. You can't do it if it's a business because it's not a consumer purchase. You're not the end user. Do it for your house. Do it for your home. Now, the difference that we're going to be doing here, the difference between this and the earlier version, A, you're going to be operating as a teller for the Bank of Canada. B, you're going to be writing on it consumer purchase, and you are not going to be trying to draw from an account that has the same number as your birth certificate. It might not be individual accounts. What we're going to do is we're going to draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. This information apparently might not identify an account, but it identifies that you have access to an account called the Consolidated Revenue Fund. And here's the argument. Okay, so now this process, in order to engage in this, you're going to have to serve some letters and some notices on certain parties. One is going to be to the governor of the Bank of Canada. You're going to serve him a notice telling them, hey, I'm your new teller. Hello, and I claim the right to act as a teller for the purposes of dealing with your remittances. Then you also send a letter to the Minister of Finance, or actually a notice to the Minister of Finance. And your goal with him is to increase his mandate. Here you're a teller. Now, when you send your payments off to people like TELUS or a gas company or hydro company or whatever, they might not know what to do with it. So, since we're very nice, courteous people, of course, we're going to send them a courtesy letter full of instructions explaining to them how this remittance is in fact the payment, and when properly presented by them to the Minister of Finance, they will get paid through the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So send them a courtesy letter telling them what to do with it. Now finally, you're going to do a claim of right, and all of these people are going to be getting copies of your claim of right. You're going to be claiming the right to do all of these things, to act as a teller, or Bank of Canada guy has to provide one for you, or order tellers in existing banks to provide your service for you. But the remedy has to be there, and he can't block it. So you claim the right to act as a teller. You claim the right to increase the minister's mandate. Claim the right to access the Consolidated Revenue Fund and to pay for your remittances using the remittance option or the 96 fix. You're going to have to do all of these before you start engaging in your process. You have to make sure before you try getting paid on this, or before you try paying on this, that you do in fact increase the minister's mandate, and that you do act as a teller, or you get someone acting as a teller with that document. So when you send it to these people, along with your courtesy letter and your claim of right, they know that they will get paid out of that $5 billion fund that's sitting there specifically for this purpose. So I hope that helps you out. That's essentially the process. Now, these things, people are going to say, give me notices, give me copies, give me examples. Dudes, this is about growing up. It's about recognizing your duties as a human being and as a proper Canadian. Writing these is not difficult. You can find them. I'm sure that there'll be forums with people posting their examples on it. If you wanted to pay me, I'd do it. But dudes, I don't think I have an obligation to create for you your claim of right, or to be your courtesan, or to increase the minister's mandate on your behalf, or to speak to the Bank of Canada governor on your behalf. So you can learn these things. A notice is a simple thing. There's only going to be very few things in it, a little bit of research, a little bit of self-education. You will have the tools you need to send off to these people. I don't like it when people expect me to do it all for them. There is such a thing as due diligence. There is such a thing as educating yourself. And me showing you is not going to teach you as much as you doing it yourself. If you can't craft a notice, you shouldn't be using this process. Okay, so here's the thing, folks. What we were trying to do was to draw from an account evidenced by the birth certificate and using that number, claiming it was the actual account. But that would require that the government have millions of accounts, and I don't think they do that now. I think what that does, here's you. Your birth certificate evidences that there has been payment from you through the fact that you were born here into the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drawing upon that fund to meet these demands and payments. And right now there's over $5 billion in there for you to access in order to pay and meet certain fundamental needs. Now listen to this. Let's suppose there's this Consolidated Revenue Fund, there's you, and there's your representative, and you're all existing in Canada. Now your representative will not argue that they have a right to access the Consolidated Revenue Fund, even though they're not paying into it as a representative, in order to take money out of it and pay for things like their heat, their water, their rent, even trips, $500 office chairs. All of these things are justified expenditures for your representatives to draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, even though they don't pay into it. Now, since you pay into it, and it's okay for your representatives to use this money for things like food, water, heat, and rent, then why isn't it okay for you to draw from it and pay for the things that you need as well? There is not a government agent out there who could argue that they have a right to draw from the Consolidated Revenue Fund to pay rent and heat and water and hydro, and yet you can't. How could they do that? Sorry, Representative, you're fired the moment they even try. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're no longer trying to draw from an account saying the birth certificate is the account or it has the account number. All that does is evidence that you have paid into the Consolidated Revenue Fund, and therefore you have a right to draw from it. And this Consolidated Revenue Fund, it belongs to Canada. It belongs to the people of Canada, not the government of Canada, and it is only administered by the government of Canada. And what I think is that the $5 billion they've got sitting in there, I think all of these remittances that they've got floating around, I think they're all covered by that $5 billion in there. And I think you can use that $5 billion to pay for your rent, your food, your hydro. Now this doesn't mean you should be living high off the hog. It just means you shouldn't be getting kicked out to the street, homeless and hungry and broke, because you might not have enough income coming in to cover those needs. And I see no evidence, no reason why your representatives would be able to have their heat paid for by your fund, and yet you can't pay for it from your fund yourself directly. What I can do by my representative, by way of proxy, I can do directly. So if my representatives can draw from the fund, so can we. So that's what we're going to be doing. No more account, this is my account, nope. Your birth certificate evidences that you have paid into the big account, and that's the one we're going to be drawing from. Now, in order to draw from that account, you're going to need the Minister of Finance to okay it. And that means you're going to have to send a letter to him increasing his mandate, empowering him to do just that.